Welcome, traveler. Tonight, as you close your eyes, let your mind drift across vast rolling grasslands, where the horizon stretches unbroken, and the air is filled with the subtle whispers of ancient history. Settle in and allow the story of the Scythians, the nomads who once ruled the Eurasian steppes, to guide you into a peaceful, restorative sleep. Our journey begins far back in time, before the rise of empires, before the great stone cities, in a world dominated by the tireless winds and endless plains of the Pontic-Caspian steppe. This is the homeland of the Scythians, a people whose lives were intertwined with the open sky, whose history was woven with the movements of horses, herds, and the call of distant thunder. Who were the Scythians? They are often called a mystery, a shadowy people roaming the unreachable horizon. But to the eyes of the ancient world Persians, Greeks, and many others, the Scythians were a living reality, a presence to be reckoned with, sometimes admired for their freedom and martial prowess, sometimes feared as ferocious raiders, and sometimes welcomed as invaluable allies. Like the wind that shaped their homeland, the Scythians shaped the course of history, not through the construction of cities, but through mobility, adaptability, and the mastery of the horse. Tonight, let us wander step by step through the story of these remarkable nomads. To understand the Scythians, we must first imagine the Eurasian steppes, a band of grassland stretching thousands of kilometers from the Hungarian plain, across Ukraine, western Russia, and far eastward through Central Asia, bounded by forests. To the north and deserts or mountains to the south, this open landscape formed a unique environment sometimes stark, but well suited for herds of horses, cattle, and sheep. About 3,000 years ago, a transformation began. The people of these grasslands started to master horseback riding. They learned to shoot arrows from horseback, and their lives became ever more mobile, following the needs of their animals and the changing seasons. These were the ancestors of the Scythians, the word Scythian itself known to us from Greek. Writers like Herodotus did not refer to a single unified state or ethno-linguistic group, but rather to a diverse confederation of tribes, sharing broad similarities in culture, language, and way of life. The Greeks called them Scythi, while for the Persians they were the Saka. Archaeologists today speak of the Scythian culture, marked by its distinctive art, burial customs, and material remains. The rise of the Scythians is dated roughly to the 9th or 8th centuries BCE. Their origin is likely found in a fusion of local Bronze Age peoples like the Shrubnaya and earlier Andronovo cultures, with new arrivals from the east. Out of this blend, a new horse-based nomadic lifestyle radiated across the steppe. The earliest Scythian tombs, or kurgans, appear in the North Pontic region, in what is today southern Ukraine and southwestern Russia. These burial mounds tell you as much. Weapons, horse tack, exquisite gold ornaments, and remnants of once lavish clothing, all giving voice to a people who prized martial skill, mobility, and a distinctive sense of style. Somewhere in the cool dawn, an encampment stirs. Leather tents yurts clustered on a slight rise, with horses grazing nearby, guarded by attentive youths armed with bows. The Scythian day begins with care for the herds, mending of saddles and harness, and the simple but nourishing meals of cheese, fermented maize milk, and dried meat. Scythian society was built around the needs and rhythms of their animals, especially horses. Herd animals not only provided milk, meat, and hides, but also served as currency, prestige, and the very means of mobility and survival. Scythian children learned to ride and shoot nearly as soon as they could walk. Horses were so central that they were honored even in death. In many royal tombs, dozens of horses each, adorned with ornamental masks or bridles, were buried alongside their owners to serve in the afterlife. Scythian clothing was practical, but also distinctive, long-sleeved, tunics, colorful trousers or leggings, high boots, and tall caps. Both men and women wore ornamented belts and jewelry, often worked in gold or bronze with intricate motifs gripping beasts, soaring eagles, and intertwining vines characteristic of Scythian animal-style art. These motifs would later travel as far east as China and as far west as the edges of Europe. Life on the steppe demanded resilience but also adaptability. Scythians lived not in permanent villages, but in shifting seasonal camps. In winter, they sheltered in valleys. In summer, they drove their herds into high grasslands. Social structure was flexible, centered on extended families, clans, and chieftains who emerged as leaders usually through demonstrated warrior skill, generosity, and ability to command loyalty. It was as warriors that the Scythians most struck the imagination of their neighbors. In Greek vase paintings, Scythians are shown as master archers, riding compact, muscular horses and shooting arrows with their distinctive recurved bows. Bow was not just a weapon, but a symbol of Scythian identity and skill. Specially designed for mounted use, these composite bows packed a powerful punch, and skilled archers could shoot effectively at a gallop, turning the open steppe into their own battlefield. Scythian arrows were famous for their accuracy, and sometimes for their poison tips, concocted from snake venom or decaying animal parts, to inflict especially grievous wounds on their enemies, unlike the infantry-based armies of many settled neighbors. Scythian warfare was defined by speed, surprise, and mobility. They preferred the tactics of the hit-and-run raid, rapid assaults, feigned retreats, and trickery to trap slower or less mobile foes. Both men and women could become warriors, and many Greek sources remark on the presence of Scythian Amazons, women who fought alongside the men. Whether as legend or reality, burial evidence confirms that some Scythian women were interred with weapons and signs of high status. Despite their fearsome reputation, Scythian warfare was not merely destructive. The ability to strike quickly meant that the Scythians could raid, harass, or defend vast territories. When threatened by invaders, they could simply retreat deeper into the steppe, drawing enemies into pursuit and cutting them off from supplies, a lesson painfully learned by would-be conquerors from Darius the Great to later rivals. To understand the Scythians more deeply, we must look beyond the bow and the saddle. Their culture was woven with ceremony, ritual, and a complex relationship with the natural and spiritual worlds. The living and the dead were bound together. In traditions passed from generation to generation, the most impressive testimony to these customs are the great Kurgan's burial mounds scattered like ancient sentinels across the steppes. Digging into these tombs, archaeologists have found the bodies of Scythian nobility, surrounded by gold ornaments, weapons, intricately crafted clothing, and sometimes sacrificed horses and servants. Each object was more than wealth. It was a symbol, a passport for the onward journey, a declaration of status and identity. Scythian belief in an afterlife was strong. The dead, especially chiefs and important warriors, were accompanied into the next world with immense care. Mounds were crowned with wooden chambers, filled with grave goods, and decorated with painted scenes from mythology and daily life. Texts from Greek writers hint at elaborate funerals, feasting, ritual contests, and long processions. Religious life among the Scythians was both personal and clan-based. Their chief deities reflected the realities of steppe existence. Tebidi, goddess of the hearth and fire. Papeus, ruler of the sky. And other gods held responsible for the earth, water, and war. Shrines were often little more than a sacred space. In the grass, marked by upright wooden poles or decorated animal skulls. Priests, sometimes women, acted as mediators, reading omens in the flight of birds or the shapes of burned bones. The Scythians' close relationship with the animal world shaped much of their spiritual life. Legends spoke of great stags, golden griffins, or monstrous beasts from the snowy north. Their art blended the forms of elk, wolves, lions, and mythical creatures, all swirling in motion, locked in combat or transformation. Asterisk as centuries passed, the Scythians moved from mysterious neighbors to vital participants in the history of Eurasia. Their territory, rich in pastures and straddling important east-west trade routes, made them both a bridge and a barrier between powerful civilizations to the south. The rising might of the Persian Empire, under kings like Darius the Great, sought to extend its dominion across the steppe. In the late 6th century BCE, Darius himself led a famous campaign against the Scythians, crossing the Danube River and plunging deep into their heartland. But the Scythians, true to their nature, melted away before his advance, refusing pitched battle, leading his armies ever deeper into the grasslands and cutting them off from supplies. Harried by Scythian attacks, burdened by vast distances and hostile terrain, the Persian host was forced to retreat humiliated, but respectful of the nomads' power. To the west, the Greeks established colonies along the Black Sea coast, Olbia, Chersonesus, Panticapaeum becoming trading partners and sometimes rivals. Scythians supplied grain, honey, furs, and slaves. In return, Greeks brought wine, finely worked jewelry, pottery, and a window onto Mediterranean culture. Gradually, some Scythians grew wealthy from this exchange, building more elaborate tombs, holding court with Greek artisans and scribes, and creating a fusion of Scythian and Hellenic styles. Stories and rumors flowed both ways. Greek poets imagined the Scythians as paradoxical, barbaric yet noble, free yet savage, expert in war yet lovers of peace and song. Herodotus, the father of history, devoted entire chapters of his great work to the customs, beliefs, and wars of the Scythians, preserving legends and hearsay alongside careful observation. To the east, the Scythians encountered kindred peoples, Sakas, Massagetæ, Sarmatians nations grown from similar roots, sometimes allies, sometimes adversaries. These eastern steppe tribes would one day rise into new confederations and empires of their own, inheriting and reshaping the Scythian legacy. Let us return now to a day in the life of a Scythian family. Imagine a camp at the edge of a river. White felt tents catching the sunlight, children racing on spirited ponies, elders tending the fires. Women work skilled fingers over beads and gold, weaving garments beautifully patterned with geometric designs. Men assess herds, check arrow stocks, exchange news from distant camps. Meals are simple, yet sustaining. Stews of horse meat or mutton, heavy bread, sour milk, perhaps wild berries or honey gathered from the steppe. Hospitality is vital. The sharing of food and drink binds ally to ally, stranger to host. When feasts are held perhaps in honor of a successful raid, a marriage, or a funeral, the air rings with music from lyres and panpipes, the steady drumbeat echoing the rhythm of galloping. Hooves. In this ever-moving world, unity and division intermingle. Clans compete for grazing land or prestige, yet when threatened, they unite in defense of ancient ways. Alliances are sealed by marriage, oath, and gift-giving. Disputes are settled through combat, negotiation, or the judgment of wise elders. Above, the sky stretches blue and eternal, as it did for countless generations of Scythian riders. When the Scythians were not riding or tending herds, their skilled hands were busy. Gold, so abundantly present in the rivers and hills of the steppe, became their hallmark. Scythian goldsmiths created fantastical ornaments, torques, belt buckles, and grave goods, each object a miniature masterpiece. These treasures, carefully buried in kurgans, have survived millennia, dazzling all who find them with their lifelike animals, some real, some mythic, all rendered in a dynamic, swirling style. The Scythian animal style, Art is one of their most enduring legacies. In it, stags leap, griffins battle, eagles seize hares, each figure crafted with keen observation and a subtle fluidity of motion. Patterns traveled far, influencing Persian, Greek, and even Chinese artisans. Many pieces were clearly status symbols worn only by elites, while others might have served more practical or ceremonial purposes. Beyond jewelry, the Scythians were proficient leatherworkers, woodcarvers, and weavers. Clothing often dyed in vivid reds and blues, patterned with embroidery, protected against the harsh winds and cold nights. Saddles were padded and painted, horse harnesses sometimes adorned with precious metals or inlaid stones. Even every day, objects reflected artistry, with drinking cups, combs, and tools decorated with motifs from the wild. Asterisk, while Scythian society, like many in the ancient world, was shaped by warrior ideals, women played critical and multifaceted roles. They managed herds, arranged alliances, crafted clothing and ornaments, and sometimes, and this shocked outsiders, joined men in combat. Burials reveal that some Scythian women lived and died as warriors. Bodies interred with armor, bows, and riding gear speak powerfully of female agency. Ancient Greek stories gave rise to the myth of the Amazons' fierce women warriors from the edge of the known world. Whether these legends exaggerated or simply misunderstood, they do reflect a measure of Scythian reality, a world in which women could and sometimes did take up arms, fight, and rule. Women also often served as seers and priestesses. Their knowledge of herbal medicine, sacred rituals, and ancestral lore made them central figures in maintaining the health and spiritual well-being of the tribe. Asterisk, when conflict loomed, Scythian warriors mounted up, ready for rapid movement and sudden ambush. Their primary weapon was the composite bow short, powerful, and effective from horseback. Arrows, carefully knapped from flint or cast from bronze and iron, filled their quivers. They carried curved swords called aconakes, battle axes, and spears. For protection, they wore scale armor made from leather or metal plates, and iron helmets. Shields, often circular and reinforced with wood or hide, completed the ensemble. The Scythians preferred speed and maneuver over static defense. Their classic tactic was the Parthian shot, a feigned retreat during which riders twisted in the saddle to launch arrows at pursuing enemies. This maneuver delivered devastating blows to the slow-moving armies of sedentary empires. When necessary, Scythian tribes could join forces and field thousands of mounted warriors, united by kinship or common cause. Yet the loose confederation structure meant that campaigns were often brief, with shifting alliances and quick withdrawals when odds turned unfavorable. Asterisk, as centuries passed, the Scythians maintained a precarious existence at the crossroads of powerful civilizations. To the south, the Achaemenid Persian Empire remained a formidable presence. To the west, Greek colonies continued to expand and prosper on the Black Sea coast. Through trade and war, both influenced and were influenced by the Scythians. Some Scythian leaders grew wealthy, controlling trade in grain, slaves, and luxury goods. Others clashed with Greek outposts or resisted Persian expansion. Occasionally, Scythian princes visited Greek cities, marveling at temples, theaters, and markets so different from the open, ever-changing world of the steppe. By the 4th century BCE, however, new pressures began to mount. Sarmatian tribes, kindred nomads from the east, pressed into Scythian territory, disrupting established orders. Warfare became more frequent and devastating, and the once mighty Scythian confederacies began to fragment, yet for generations. More, Scythian culture endured, lingering along the lower Dnieper and Crimea, glimpsed in trade, art, and the stories of neighboring peoples. As the Scythians faced change at the edges of their world, they adapted in ways both subtle and profound. With each generation, Traditions were passed down, some altered, others preserved, forming an unbroken chain linking the past to an unfolding future. Asterisk, the connection between Scythians and Greeks deepened over centuries. Coastal cities like Olbia and Panticapaeum became melting pots, places where steppe nomads and urban Greeks mingled, traded, and sometimes intermarried. Archaeologists find Greek pottery in Scythian tombs. Gold and horses journeyed from the Yar. Steppe to Mediterranean ports, diplomatic contacts were frequent. Scythian chieftains occasionally sent embassies to Athens and other city-states, negotiating alliances or mutual defense pacts. Greek playwrights, fascinated by the Scythian image, put them on stage depicting them as exotic archers serving as royal guards or as cunning barbarians embodying freedom untamed by city walls. This cultural exchange was not one-sided. Some Scythians adopted Greek drinking customs, imported foreign goods, and even incorporated Greek motifs into their art and jewelry. The Black Sea rim turned into a vibrant corridor of trade, ideas, and myth. Asterisk, by the 3rd century BCE. Change swept the steppe. New groups, the Sarmatians, pushed westward, challenging established Scythian chieftains for dominance over pasture and people. The Sarmatians shared much with the Scythians in culture and lifestyle, but they brought new tactics, new gods, and their own vision of steppe society. Skirmishes escalated to full-scale conflicts. Weaker Scythian clans were absorbed or displaced. Others moved south, settling in the Crimea and along the lower Danube. There, remnants of the old Scythian world persisted for centuries more. But the glory days of wide-ranging dominance were over. Settled Scythians built towns in the Crimea, mingling with Greeks and Thracians, living by a mixture of farming, trade, and war. Greek records from this era mention Little Scythia, a patchwork of peoples, traditions, and shifting allegiances. Asterisk, though the Scythians as a distinct power faded from the map, their influence endured. Steppe warfare, archery, mounted combat, mobility remained vital for centuries, carried forward by later nomads from the Huns to the Mongols. Their art, especially the animal style, lived on in the treasures of Sarmatians, Alans, and countless steppe peoples. Greek and Roman writers remembered the Scythians both as foes and as symbols. To some, they were the archetype of noble freedom, living outside the rule of kings, guided only by the laws of the plains. To others, they hovered at the edge of civilization, dangerous, unpredictable, yet always fascinating. In the lands once roamed by Scythian herders, memory lingers in the mounds rising from Ukrainian and Russian soil, in the stories of horsemen, recited by bards, in patterns that echo across centuries on rugs, metalwork, and embroidery. Asterisk, modern scholarship continues to deepen our understanding of these elusive nomads. Advances in archaeology, genetics, and linguistics reveal the Scythians as dynamic, a people who experienced conquest, trade, innovation, and cultural fusion. They were not a singular tribe, but a tapestry of communities shaped by the demands of a vast land and the opportunities of open movement. Their story is one of perpetual adaptation to climate, to neighbors, to the timeless call of the steppe. As you drift further into rest, remember, the grasslands still whisper secrets, and the rhythm of hooves echoes quietly across the ages. The Scythians have long since passed from the earth, but in story, song, and spirit, their legacy continues, reminding us of worlds beyond walls, of freedom beneath open skies. Music swells softly, inviting deep calm, carrying the listener toward sleep. The journey across the steppes, like the dream, goes on. Asterisk, as our journey moves ever more quietly across the centuries, the Scythians remain a presence, not just in the pages of history, but in the living memory of the lands they once called home. For a time, they vanished into the mists, overshadowed by new empires and sweeping migrations. Yet the patterns they traced across the land and within the imaginations of those who met them, did not fade. Asterisk in the centuries after their heyday. The Scythians endured in pockets, especially in the Crimea and along the northern shores of the Black Sea. Here, as Rome's influence spread eastward, old traditions met the new world. Roman generals, governors, and merchants came face to face with Scythian descendants, sometimes as allies, sometimes as adversaries. The Roman historian Strabo spoke of Scythians inhabiting the region as late as the 1st century BCE, though by then the name increasingly blended with that of the Sarmatians and other emerging steppe peoples. For Romans, the term Scythian came to evoke anyone from the far north and east, a byword for the unknown, the untamed, and the mysterious. Trade. Caravans moved along ancient steppe routes, bringing Roman glass, silver, and ceramics to distant markets. Local Scythian chiefs found new prestige as intermediaries in these networks, adapting old ways to new realities, always seeking advantage while holding fast to cherished customs, horsemanship, hospitality, and independence. Asterisk the great roads that stitched together the old worlds. The Silk Roads ran, in part, across steppe country first shaped by Scythian herders. Caravans laden with silk, spices, furs, and precious stones crossed grasslands that had known Scythian horses, their tracks faint beneath fresh wheels and hooves, though later travelers Sogdian merchants, Chinese ambassadors, Parthian and Roman. Traders would reshape these routes. The legacy of Scythian mobility and their knowledge of the land lingered. Stories and small communities bearing their name survived far into the 1st millennium CE, passing along remnants of language, art, and legend. Asterisk, in more recent times, the story of the Scythians has been brought to light by another kind of traveler, the archaeologist. Across the steppes, in Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, and further afield, great burial mounds yield treasures undreamed of: golden pectorals, weapons, combs, textiles, even mummified remains. One of the most astonishing discoveries came in the frozen tombs of the Altai Mountains, where the permafrost preserved not just metal and bone, but clothing, hair, tattoos, and the fragile traces of ancient life long vanished elsewhere. These finds reveal a world of color, artistry, and imagination, reminding us that steppe nomads were not merely warriors or wanderers, but creators and dreamers, every bit as complex as the greatest societies of Greece, Persia, or Rome. Genetic studies and linguistic research continue to reshape our view of the Scythians, revealing them as part of a much wider web of steppe cultures. Their traditions of leadership, mobility, and exchange echo in the societies that succeeded them and in the very rhythms of Eurasian history. Asterisk today, the word Scythian carries a sense of mystery, a people without cities, a history without chronicles, a legend surviving where records are few. But for thousands of years, the Scythians were reality, masters of their world, shapers of Eurasian destiny, and custodians of a landscape both wild and beautiful. Artists, poets, and historians continue to find inspiration in their story. Freedom of the steppes, the bonds of horse and rider, the resilience in the face of change. Modern descendants in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and beyond sometimes claim kinship with the ancient Scythians, seeking meaning in ancient names and customs. Museums display their treasures. Scholars debate their mysteries, and storytellers, like you, carry their memory across time, inviting new listeners to follow the sound of hoofbeats beneath the open sky. The final embers of the fire burn low, and a hush settles over the steppe. You rest, listening as the world grows still, timeless and eternal. Asterisk long after the Scythians themselves faded from history. Their name lived on in stories told by Greeks, Persians, Romans, and Slavs. The very word Scythian became synonymous in classical texts with the wild freedom of the open steppe. a shorthand for all the horse-borne peoples who followed. Some modern languages carry faint echoes of their legacy. References to steppe cultures appear in poetry, place names, and national myths. Medieval chronicles, too, sometimes confused later invaders Huns, Turks, Mongols with the ancient Scythians, blurring the boundaries of history but keeping the old mystique alive. In folklore, motifs of golden griffins, noble archers, and wise rulers endure. Folk songs and epic tales from Kazakhstan to Ukraine and the Caucasus ring with memories of ancestors who came from the grasslands, riding beneath vast, empty skies. As sleep draws nearer, let us gather the meaning of the Scythian story. They teach us about resilience, the power to adapt and survive in changing worlds. Their society, woven from thousands of shifting camps and countless journeys, thrived for centuries without walls, cities, or written records. They reveal how cultural exchange, sometimes peaceful, sometimes turbulent, enriches all who take part in it. The steppe was always a crossroads, where new ideas and ways found fertile ground. Their art, painstakingly crafted for lives always on the move, reminds us of the human hunger for beauty, even in the harshest places. The bonds they formed, families, clans, animals, and the land itself show that community can be as strong beneath the open sky as within stone cities. Imagine one last time the world of the Scythians. Horses shimmering with early dew, riders vanishing into rising sun. A song on the wind, a fire crackling in the night, laughter mingling with tales of old. Here, life was fragile but bright. Every day, a journey. Every camp, a home, if only for a season. From these distant lives, a sense of possibility remains. There is freedom in movement, dignity in heritage, and mystery in the spaces between what is remembered and what will never be known. The Scythians remind us to cherish both what we inherit and what we must create for ourselves. As you rest, let these echoes return, gentle and unhurried. The world is vast, history deep, but the thread of story connects us all. In dreams, perhaps, you too will ride the steppe swift and unbound beneath the endless blue. As the centuries unfolded, the traces of the Scythians became fewer, a scattering of arrowheads in tilled earth, a gleam of gold in a museum's light, a half-remembered saga recited at a fireside. Their language, once spoken across vast lands, faded to silence. Their rituals, so bound to grassland and sky, vanished as new faiths, settlements, and empires swept across Eurasia. Yet the land itself remembers. The great grassy plains hold secrets beneath their roots, bones, harness buckles, the charred posts of long-lost camps. Shepherds and farmers sometimes uncover these fragments and wonder who were the people that roamed here, free as the wind, before kingdoms drew boundaries and mapped the earth. For archaeologists, each kurgan opened is another letter in the alphabet of a forgotten script. There is excitement in each lost work of art uncovered, a thrill in reconstructing daily life from broken pottery and tattered clothing. For artists, the motifs of the Scythians reappear, spirals and beasts, galloping horses, the dance of life and death rendered in metal and thread. In the end, the Scythians became part of a larger, shared story, a symbol of a way of life that was, for many, deeply human, unbound by walls, in touch with the rhythms of animals and seasons, shaped by movement and change. Their freedom inspired generations, both near and far, and their endurance in legend points to something unending in human nature, a longing for open skies, for roots that spread not downward but outward, chasing the sun. And so, as you lie quietly, listening for the last faint echo of hoofbeats and the last golden glimmer beneath the grass, you share in the oldest tradition of all, the telling of stories, passed hand to hand, mind to mind, across the passing years. Let the story of the Scythians carry you gently into sleep across wide, peaceful plains where the horizon is endless. And every dream is a path waiting to be explored. The world lies still beneath a pale sky. The Scythians have slipped into legend, but their story, like all great stories, circles back toward us, gentle and persistent, echoing across time. Asterisk, what? Endures after an entire people slip below the horizon? Perhaps it is the sense of openness they left behind, the notion that human life can flourish even without walls or kings amid grass, sky, and the ceaseless movement of seasons. The Scythians were both real and mythical, riders, traders, artists, and warriors, but also symbols of freedom for some, of wildness for others. Their story reminds us that there are countless ways to live, and that not all civilization is built of stone. Some is crafted from memory, kinship, and the music of the wind in tall grass. Asterisk historians, poets, and dreamers still chase the Scythian shadow, writing books, unearthing new finds, inspiring stories for a new age. From children learning of Amazons to adventurers retracing old Silk Road paths, from museums proud to display a glimmer of golden deer to the anonymous travelers staring out a train window at endless plains, the Scythians live on, hints and questions. Journeys not yet ended. There is so much still unknown. A meaning of tattooed lines on preserved skin. The voices of women and children whose names are lost forever. Each new discovery adds a brushstroke to a vast, unfinished canvas. Asterisk, as the sun rises gently in the east, you, too, may awaken refreshed, curious, and at ease, carrying with you whispers of time, a touch of wonder, and the knowledge that the world is woven of many lives, many stories. The Scythians rode out into the dawn, and in a way, so do you, every day, inheriting a world shaped by centuries of courage, creativity, and change. Sleep now, knowing you are part of the tapestry. Endless pattern, always moving, always new. May the road ahead be peaceful and wide, open as the steppe beneath a limitless sky. The wind stills. The story ends for now, but the journey of dreams, like the journey of the Scythians, never truly finishes. Asterisk, before you awaken, take with you the memory of the other peoples who called the steppe their home. The Scythians were not alone, nor were their rivals and kin so different. The Cimmerians before them, the Sarmatians and Alans after, each rode these same windswept lands, each adapting, learning, teaching, and blending, creating a long lineage of nomad nations. As centuries rolled on, new powers emerged from the steppes. Horizon, the Huns and Avars, the Pechenegs and Cumans, and later, the Mongols, each, in turn, inheritors of a tradition as old as the grass itself. To ride beneath these skies was to inherit knowledge passed along invisible routes, how to track the seasons, how to keep peace or make war, how to cherish freedom and mourn what is lost. The echo of the Scythians shaped not only legends, but languages, not only art, but empires. The style of their archers informed distant armies. The spirit of their councils whispered into the traditions of peoples across Eurasia. Though they are gone, their lineage runs onward, subtle, but never truly broken. Asterisk, let the lesson be this, that vastness is its own kind of home, and that even fleeting, the marks we make on lands and lives may endure as whispers on the wind. Imagine you are a wanderer on those immense plains. Each star above you once watched over a different people. Each riverbank remembers stories of joy and longing, courage and farewell. The Scythians teach us to honor what we cannot hold, to listen for stories in silence, to trace invisible connections between the worlds of past and present. May you greet the new day with curiosity, peace, and a quiet pride, knowing that the freedom of the steppe belongs to all who imagine it. And so, our journey together through the history of the Scythians nomads, dreamers and teachers of the open world, draws to its close. Night fades. The wind grows kind. Sleep well and carry these ancient blessings into your waking life. Asterisk, as the world awakens, you may sense how stories persist, reaching across centuries and cultures. The Scythians, once rulers of the horizon, have become part of a shared lineage, a reminder that everyone, everywhere, carries ancestry through both time and memory. From the wide steppes of Eurasia to the crowded streets of today's cities, we inherit the dreams and achievements of those who lived before us. The Scythians were not ghosts or shadows, but people, waking, struggling, loving, inventing, teaching, and remembering, just as we do. Let your final thoughts settle on the vastness, the knowledge that change is as constant as the shifting grass, and that, like the herds moving across the endless plain, we too are always seeking, always on a journey. Asterisk historians and travelers still follow the whispers of the Scythians. They discover lost treasures, decipher ancient languages, and wonder about lives lived out under different stars. Each new generation adds a verse to the ongoing song. Each new question deepens the sense of wonder. Perhaps, as you awaken, a small piece of this wide world will stay with you. A pause beneath an open sky, a feeling of possibility, a quiet awe at lives both distant and near. The Scythians, in their freedom and creativity, offer a model for meeting change, with courage, with art, with community, and with openness to lands beyond our own. A closing breeze moves across the steppe, rustling the grass one last time. The dawn is yours. Asterisk as this story ends. Let its spirit walk beside you in dreams and waking moments alike. Every step you take, every idea you explore, joins the tapestry woven by countless ancestors, nomads, settlers, thinkers, and storytellers. May you carry forward the peace, wisdom, and possibility passed down from the wide, open world of the Scythians. Sleep well, traveler. The steppe awaits, both in memory and in every new horizon.